President Donald Trump wasting no time to fulfill some campaign promises and purge the federal government. His administration, via an Office of Personnel Management memo, ordered that all federal employees with DEI jobs be placed on paid leave by 5 p.m. on Wednesday, and that all DEI offices and programs should be shut down.
The memo followed Trump's executive order, which overturned President Lyndon Johnson's 1965 order that established affirmative action and anti-discrimination protections. The memo also warned against disguising DEI programs using coded language, and it said that employees who witness this and fail to disclose the information within a 10-day period will face adverse consequences.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt wrote in a statement, President Trump campaigned on ending the scourge of DEI from our federal government and returning America to a merit-based society where people are hired based on their skills, not for the color of their skin. This is another win for all Americans, for Americans of all races, religions, and creeds. Promises made, promises kept.
Meanwhile, the Congressional Black Caucus responded to Trump's move, writing, "This executive order is nothing short of an attempt to take our country backward and does nothing to help our communities grow economically or address the costs of living for hard-working American families. This executive order is not only a broken economic promise, it stands in opposition to evidence which shows that diversity initiatives improve the government's ability to better serve our communities."
Earlier on Tuesday, the White House announced that the Transportation Department and the Federal Aviation Administration would stop DEI hiring practices and quote, return to merit-based hiring. In another move to pare down the federal workforce, the White House on Tuesday demanded that federal agencies list employees who are on a probationary period and recommend who should keep their jobs.
University of Michigan professor Don Moynihan wrote on Blue Sky, quote, "This isn't about woke government or DEI. It is removing civil rights era protections against discrimination."
On the other side, podcast host Megyn Kelly wrote on X, "It's like we went to sleep, woke up, and all of our dreams have come true." Babylon Bee managing editor Joel Berry said, okay, now it's time for Congress to pass these Trump executive orders into law. What's stopping Congress from enshrining Remain in Mexico or no DEI in government? We have both houses. What is stopping us? That is a good sentiment from the conservative side of things, because we don't want to create a reality where if we lose in 4 years, somebody comes in and just does executive orders reversing all this. Yeah. So I suspect we're going to disagree heartily here. But
well, on the merits of DEI, I suspect we are. But yeah,
yes,
go ahead.
We are. Look, I would say that this is certainly not about reversing non-discrimination. It remains the law of the land that you cannot have discriminatory hiring. The conservative criticism of at least aspects of DEI, sometimes it's not even clear what we're talking about DEI, but especially the hiring and if school admissions, that kind of thing, the conservative position, and actually I would say it's the majority position within the country, if you try to pass these things, even in like liberal California, they've often failed, is that the most qualified people should be staffing the administration, that it's not. It's also, if a private employer really wants to do DEI hiring, am I going to stand in their way? I think it's silly, but I guess I really don't care. It's your company, but this is the federal government we're talking about. This is our tax dollars being spent. I can't speak, I guess, for all of the American people, but it's very clear, I think, that Donald Trump ran on the platform of ending a kind of race-based consideration or other-based consideration in hiring. And also I disagree with, was that the Congressional Black Caucus saying that there's a lot of scientific evidence of benefits to these initiatives. That is simply not true. Maybe there's some evidence. There are also a lot of studies really calling into question specifically the implicit bias training module, which causes more consternation than it solves. Maybe some of these people were doing good work, as with our very contentious J6 conversation yesterday. I don't love blanket whatever. I would like it to be a case-by-case basis, but overall, I'm certainly satisfied with this policy.
So let me counter your criticism of the CBC by saying, quoting Megyn Kelly on diversity initiatives. So white Jesus lady herself is not necessarily the way forward in these respects. But look, there is, I think, a problem about the definition of exactly what is meant by DEI. Where I would defend it is in relation specifically to both hiring and to making employees from different backgrounds comfortable and welcome and feeling respected in the workforce. I know just from personal experience, if you talk to, the vast majority of women whom I know in the professional world, or non-white people whom I know in the professional world, have many, many stories to tell about where they believe gender or race resulted in them not getting credit for what they should have got credit for, not getting promoted where they should have done, not being valued in the way that they should have done. In relation to hiring, I do think DEI has a place in guarding against not only implicit bias, which can be a bit of a buzzword, but the propensity to simply hire from networks that the people in the companies already have, which tend to look or resemble them in demographic terms. So I think all of that is very justifiable. It is true that Trump ran on an anti-DEI platform, among many other things, and he won. I think that it is important to acknowledge the validity of his victory. I do not think that that means that people cannot dissent from those policies or object to those policies or argue against those policies. And to simply cut it all off from the federal government, where there is in fact some evidence, and I know it depends which study you look at, but there are some people who would argue that there are tangible empirical benefits to a diverse workplace, and that in the private sector, even companies that have diverse workforces do better.
Yeah, it depends what you mean by diversity. I agree. Actually diverse experience, life experiences which can be informed by characteristics like race and gender and sexuality, etc. Yes, can make you a more well-rounded or different thinking person, but then it would be that the characteristics are trying to get at a fundamentally more, the actual diversity, right? They're a stand-in for that. So if you're just relying on the surface characteristics, like you could end up, this is what colleges find, if you end up getting, just a bunch of, for instance, faculty with, different skin colors, but progressive groupthink. What's the difference? I also, I totally agree on doing outreach to groups that for whatever reason might not know about these opportunities, might be underrepresented for reasons of lack of hearing about the opportunities. But that so that is all fine, but then when it actually comes to the hiring or admissions decision, my view is that they shouldn't, and I would actually argue under existing law can't, although that's been litigated at the Supreme Court back and forth. They can't say, okay, well, you're a little less qualified than this person, but for reasons of race or gender or whatever, we're giving you a couple more points on our scale, and you get tipped up. That is what I think of a majority of the American people have said they do not want done in any context.
That may be true. I agree that it is important that diversity in fact means diversity. It is not just a stand-in purely for a small number of criteria. And one of the things that people were defending the DEI programs in relation to the federal government is not purely on the grounds of race or gender, but on things like having a multi-generational workforce, so people who are older, or for that matter younger, are not discriminated against, people who suffer physical handicap or impairment of some kind. It is important that the circumstances of offices and physical locations does not in effect bar them from employment. So I think all of those things are part of diversity too.
And in terms of going back to what you were saying a minute ago about the workplace or the classroom, whatever, being welcoming and accommodating, and people getting overlooked or having some uncomfortable experience for a characteristic identity-based reason. Of course that happens, and we have HR departments to deal with those kinds of things. It goes that way. It goes in multiple directions, though, right? Because there are also cases, we've read about them specifically when they pertain to media, because media cases end up being talked about.
Well, the media is fascinated by itself, right?
Of people also, weaponizing those kinds of processes to just, particularly in creative fields or editorial fields where there's a communications product, weaponizing that product, just that process against people they don't like or people they disagree with. Think of all the the newsrooms having contortions about conservative opinions being published and saying, "Oh, this is triggering to me." Usually weaponizing the language of the kind of campus set with trigger warnings and safe spaces. I think that has all died down a little bit, but there was a fever pitch for it where I thought that this is going well beyond trying to just make everyone, trying to have a successful and happy workforce and being like, I will use this system to destroy you.
That may be true, Robby, but I always think there's a danger in using a extreme or unpopular example to discredit the broader effort. The New York Times, which is maybe one of the rows you're talking about, published that Tom Cotton op-ed, and people, particularly black employees, said that put them in actual danger or some phrase like that.
Right.
I thought that was a highly implausible claim. That does not mean that I therefore think all efforts to make workplaces more diverse and welcoming are therefore invalidated.
No,
I think there is a big imperative to have the thing.
Yeah. All right, tell us what you think, and we'll be back with more Rising right after this.